have people here already. I guess I can go ahead and get started. I know that it's live streaming. Good morning, everyone. Today is Sunday, November 20th, 22. And you might say, Roy, you're coming on during church time for everybody. Well, not for everybody. And that's why I decided to do it now. No, no bad feelings or insults to people that go to the brick and mortar churches. We're supposed to gather together and share our spiritual experiences and worship God. Have awe for God. So I don't have a problem with them, but I know that there are people out there who either can't get there or know that there are problems with most of those ecclesiastical organizations, at least to some degree or another. So I figured I'd come on and talk about a couple things this morning. If you don't want a spiritual discussion, probably ought to go ahead and leave now. Might be a good idea. I will say up front that, again, as I've been warning about, the U.S., EU, and NATO are being foolish, and that this thing will get out of control if they don't stop. We heard this morning again that Ukraine has shelled the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant, and yet the UN and the EU and the NATO and the U.S. still support these people. Not to mention all the other horrible things that are happening there. Again, I'm not siding with Russia necessarily, but I understand what the difficulties are and why this has progressed the way it has. If the U.S., NATO, and EU get on this, as I tweeted out this morning, if they really get into this any further, they are going to meet a lot of problems. They will not be able to do what they claim they can do. So I think most of this is saber rattling to try to get an advantage, but these things are dangerous, and those who are wrong should admit they're wrong and back off, but they're not going to. So just to be aware of that. I'm not going to talk about anything else this morning. I'm going to go straight to the subject matter. A few days ago, I put up a video called Q&A and Ask Me Anything on November 17th, 2022. It's like 2 videos back, something like that. And during that live stream, I asked people to look at the word that I put up on the whiteboard. It's a Hebrew Aramaic word. Kind of has, it was in Daniel 6, so it's got some properties of both. And I asked you to, for those of you who have a Strong's and a Gesenius or have an understanding of that Hebrew, to figure out what's trying to go on there. Give me what you consider to be your understanding of that, using the translations in Gesenius and Strong's, for instance, in your King James Bible or whatever Bible you're using, because I told you that word was not being explained in the translations the way it really was meant to be. And I told you that it was related very much to my entire subject of the attacks on the man-woman relationship and who's behind it. I haven't seen anybody respond to that, and I'm not going to really go there today. I just want to remind you that at some time in the next few days, we're going to have another live stream, or I might record it. I haven't decided. It depends upon how strong the internet connection is, going across some of that information, because it shows you, there were some questions. I saw 1 or 2 people say in the comments, Roy, he never answers our questions because, he's afraid to or something. That's not the issue at all. It said, I don't see all the chat. It's pretty hard. But the other thing they said is that they believe the Bible word for word, and it's been translated in other languages so everybody can understand. And in a general case, that's true as far as learning how to treat your fellow man and that thing. But as I pointed out, with this particular word, there are words, the way they're translated, that can manipulate how you view God and how you view yourself and how you view the world situation and the world to come and the world that we came from. And that's a perfect example of why you can't take the Bible in any passage verbatim in the King James. You have, or any other translation, you need to look at it and study it in that original language as best you can, and try to understand what's really going on there. And you'll still get a lot of interpretations, but it's important, primarily because of your upbringing or your culture or whatever. But you'll have a better handle on it than just accepting the English translation or the French translation or the new translations that have come out, whatever. So I haven't seen anybody come back with an explanation of what that is, and I'm just going to bring it up again because we are going to cover that sometime in the near future, along with some other related words and topics. And again, you might say, Roy, why are you concentrating so much on this man-woman thing? As I've said before, that's where the initial attacks on mankind occurred and continue to this day. Subtle, but that's what's happening. So just to remind you that we're going to talk about that. And who are the Azov Jews? I'm not going to get on that topic today. Again, we're talking about some things going on in Ukraine and in Europe there that we were warned by the American founding fathers to not get entangled with those people. They've been fighting with each other for thousands of years, and it's just, to get entangled in that whole situation is just stupidity. But that's what empires do. They try to control the situation. It's going to end up getting a lot of people, as it is right now, suffering and killed, and it's just not right. So anyway, I sent out some tweets this morning. I saw some things, and I went, wow, I've really got to address this to some extent. And I want to point out again that a lot of what happens ecclesiastically and politically isn't just error. A lot of times it's error promulgated because of the initial lies and propaganda. So some people will repeat it innocently, ignorantly. Others know exactly what they're doing, and you have to have your thinking caps on and your hearts and minds right, and you're still going to have a hard time. That study of those things is not for the faint of heart, because it goes against, a lot of times, the culture you're in. It goes against the status quo. It goes against the society you're in or the church that you're in. Anytime you come up against, the status quo of your major organizations, you face ridicule, you face dismembership, all those types of things. People want to push you aside because you're talking out things that they don't want to go to. So I put that up this morning, and I on both on Twitter and on the community tab above. Go to the community tab above and slide over. You'll see and click on that. You'll see my posts there from this morning, and I think it might be a good idea for you to read those. The other thing that I put up there, interestingly, about 7 or 8 months ago, maybe it was just last summer, I'm not sure when it was, but in the religion series tab on the playlists, I read portions of the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Psalms of the Dead Sea Scrolls. And I explained at the time that those were either scribed by those who were being told what to write by Jesus himself, or were written by Jesus himself. And when you look at those Psalms, the ones that I'm talking about, you can see a slight difference in the way that the words are constructed and even written. And that's because, it was pretty tough to write Hebrew. It still is. And it takes some time. So the scribes would take turns. Okay, even Jesus, if he was writing, may have set the little instrument down that they use for writing and say, here, can you start writing this for me, and I'll dictate. So anyway, you'll see those changes in there, but the information in those psalms is coming directly from the person that you know of Jesus, the particular songs I'm talking about. And my son Jeremy last night sent me a short part of the first of those psalms, and it reminded me that I probably need to go back there, because everybody wonders, well, Jesus was so busy, if he was really who we think he is. And of course, I have a different take on that. I talk about that as being an entirely different thing, that it's been promulgated for the last 2,000 years. But that's another story I don't want to get into this morning. The fact is that it would be unreasonable for a man of that stature not to have written something down, that only other people would have written down what they claimed he said. So the fact of the matter is the man that you know as Jesus was very active in writings and teaching in those writings and honoring and glorying God, his Father. And they're there. Not all the Dead Sea Scrolls, I'm not saying that, but there are portions. Certainly the Psalms that I quoted last summer, or whatever it was that I read those portions, and I gave the information about where to find them. I haven't put it in the description box here. Go to my religion series. I know there are a lot of videos there, but there's one where it'll talk about those writings of Jesus. Okay, he did write a lot of things, and they've been ignored by the ecclesiastical and political powers that be, because they're contrary to the propaganda of what really was going on and who he really was. Okay, yeah, I'm definitely on my own path. I figure God will deal with me personally. And then you might say, well, Roy, what's your motivation? Well, I don't have a motivation for money. I don't have a motivation to steal your soul. I don't have a motivation to even make a name for myself, but I do have a motivation that, when I can't sleep at night and I'm hearing this thing say, you've got to get up and talk about this, and I go, I don't really want to. And it says, but somebody needs to hear it. Okay. And that's what's happening this morning. I have no agenda, motivation, other than giving you some information on my own search and my own spiritual journey. If it applies to you, great. If it doesn't, great. But apparently it's important, because I've taken nearly a lifetime on this travel. And people say, well, you've been deceived. We all have been deceived to some extent. There's an old army saying, and I'll say it here. People say, I don't say it, but it's true. Shit happens. It's what you do next that counts. And that's the same with all of these spiritual journeys. You'll get on one, and if you're not faint of heart, if you're willing to admit to yourself that maybe you don't know, and you don't want to necessarily believe those in power, and a lot of them have just been, like I said, fooled. If you get out there on your own and let God deal with you personally, then you'll find out things, and it might not be the same as somebody else. That's okay. The two main commandments are what's important. Love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, might, mind, and strength. And the second is like unto it, love thy neighbor as thyself. Upon these two stand all the law and the prophets. Both Jesus and James taught that, more so than any of the other epistles or gospels. Despite the importance of the law to the Jews and all that, they had some specific ways of controlling the people, and all of that was deliberate. I'm getting a lot of messages here. I'm not sure who they are, but I apologize for that. That's the bad thing about using my phone. I'll get a lot of that stuff too. So whoever's sending me those, if you wouldn't do it, I'd appreciate it right now, okay? We're doing a live stream. Let me see if that's going to stop. Next time I'll see if I can remember to turn them off. Okay. Sorry about that. So I wanted to leave that message with you this morning. In the community posts above is an excerpt from the Dead Sea Scrolls from the Psalms that I am saying was written by the person you know, the man you know is Jesus himself, and it's an answer to the idea that God is how can I say this, that you're responsible to some extent for what happens in the world. I saw a comment on Twitter this morning that those who fear death are only because they have such a strong attachment to the material world. And I pointed out, well, what was Eden? Eden was still in the material world. People try to separate the spiritual from the material in such a way that it's not true and it's unnatural. And it's because of 2,000 years of Roman Hellenization. Okay, so just consider all of that. And the big thing that I want to get by this morning again is the word that I put up on the Q&A and the Ask Me Anything that I did on November 17th, just a few days ago. So look back, it's 2 or 3 videos back. Look at that word, and if you have access to a Gesenius and a Hebrew lexicon and all that, go study this out, and then we'll talk about it. And you're going to be probably a little disturbed by what I tell you because, again, you have 2,000 years of people telling you that certain things are nasty and evil and wrong. But they didn't want you to know this one, so they changed the translation. And that's why I say you can't totally trust Strong's or Gesenius, because a lot of what they did was due to their traditionalist Christian orientation. So a lot of the translations that they gave are based upon those orientations. They may not have even done it deliberately, but because of their culture, they went that way. And they weren't into taking the word apart and studying each letter and understanding the meaning of each letter, which is intrinsically in the word and must be considered in the translation to get a full understanding. At least there's a thing called pardes. There are 4 levels of meaning in the Hebrew. And if you only take the literal, what the word is usually translated to be, which can be mistaken, like in this case, then you're gonna miss the underlying truths and deeper understandings. So you've got to do that. So to those people who think that when they just read it in the King James Version, they're getting it all in the English, I'm not saying that isn't good for you. I'm saying that you're missing, either by people making errors or by deliberate changes to control the narrative, you're missing those deeper meanings. So I'll just leave that with you this morning. I wanted to bring up the psalm again, and I think maybe you probably ought to go read it. Again, it's in the community tab above. I think it's the second one down right now. Read that psalm that was written by Jesus' own hand, and see what it says about what we're supposed to be and what this entire life is about. And then, as my son Jeremy pointed out, and Michael Heiser would point out, although he probably wouldn't quite go along with my explanation this morning, go back to Psalms 82, where YHVH, that God, is talking to the assembled gods, saying they're gods, but that they're going to die like men. And then how Jesus quoted that in the New Testament, and how Psalms 83 and some of these other scriptures apply. And you'll see that there's more about what you're doing here than just leaving it all up to God. Okay? All right, that's all I got. I can't really see how I am on the chat outside here right now. I can't really see it. So I'm going to go ahead and go, but I'll leave that information with you all. Please, if you have the ability, go look up that word. We're going to talk about that and some other words that are related to that in the future, not too far distant future. All right? Yeah, you can access it. You just need to, if somebody says they can't access the community tab, you go up, you tap on it, and then it'll open up. If not, there's a problem in your program, okay? All right, we're going to go. We'll see you later out here.